Gentlemen, this is Leon Weinstein speaking from Los Angeles, California. We all already know that 12 minutes after the ceasefire began, 2 rockets were launched towards Israel from Israel. The following happened next.
With Ekim, President Donald Trump is now heading to the Netherlands, where he will take part in the NATO summit. The visit comes just hours after a key ceasefire agreement between Israel and Iran appears to have stalled. Let's figure out what happened. This morning, Israeli rescuers reported that an Iranian missile struck the southern city of Beersheba, killing 4 people and injuring about 20 others. After that, Israel accused Iran of launching new missiles and violating the ceasefire agreement. Then Israel stated that, quote, it would respond with force. However, Iran denies violating the agreement. President Trump, seeking to save the agreement, held a phone conversation with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The White House stated that he took a tough stance on what is necessary to maintain the ceasefire. After this conversation, Netanyahu stated that they refrained from further attacks. However, before that, the president did not hide his irritation. Listen.
I think they both violated it. I don't think so. I'm not sure they did it intentionally. They couldn't restrain the people. I really don't like that Israel went for this morning, and I'm going to try to stop it. Israel, as soon as we made the agreement, went out and dropped a number of bombs like I've never seen before. It was the most powerful raid we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the very first hour and drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. Basically, we have 2 countries that have been fighting for so long and so fiercely that they don't even understand what the hell they're doing anymore. And
what about the reaction from Israel?
Kylie, thank you for joining us again. Today on 24/7, how are things right now? Is there a chance that this deal will really hold?
Well, we're watching the answer to that question unfold in real time. I can say that there was a lot of confusion here this morning when the sirens went off and we all kept running to shelter again and again, wondering if the ceasefire had been broken. When exactly were the hostilities supposed to stop? Maybe this is the last salvo of rockets before everything comes into effect, because that often happens before a ceasefire, anywhere in the world. The warring sides often sort of shell each other right before the hostilities stop. And then real alarm set in when it became clear that people had died as a result of those morning rocket strikes. Does this mean that Israel will respond and everything will fall apart? Right now, the ceasefire is holding, but the situation is very fragile and unpredictable, so everyone is acting with extreme caution.
So, after the statement by Israel's defense minister that a series of bombings of Tehran and its surroundings will follow in response to the killing of 4 people, some even say a 5th person has already died in Beersheba. There was one attack, and then everything stopped. It seems that Trump's phone call had its effect. We don't know who sent the rockets or why. Maybe it was people who wanted the war to continue, or the left hand not knowing what the right hand was doing. But at least it's not a coordinated attack. It's an isolated incident. I'm very glad that Israel's desire to change the regime in Iraq didn't cloud the minds of the country's leaders. Or maybe Trump's call cleared their minds. The continuation of war, bombings, and destruction may not necessarily bring the results we would hope for. Changing the Islamist regime to a secular one, maybe a constitutional monarchy or some other option. But this is just one of the possible scenarios. Maybe 6, 7, or even 10 different ways events could unfold. I really don't like any of the other options, all the others except for this one. A regime change in Iran, generally speaking, is not our business. They changed the regime in Iraq, and probably now Iraq poses less of a threat to Israel, or maybe no threat at all. But for the world, what happened was actually the strengthening of Iran because they used to balance each other out. So in Iran, there is an opposition. There is the Shah's son living in exile, and there is an army that neither Israel nor the United States has touched. But what do they say about the operation to stop military actions and destroy Iran's nuclear potential in the United States itself, let's say on opposition channels where Trump is, to put it mildly, hated?
There are less than just under 30 minutes left here. Well, first of all, everything took longer than I expected. But there were four things that struck me. First, the level of secrecy of this operation. The fact that the planes took off from the continental United States. From Missouri, and they flew, I think, for more than 18 hours with several in-flight refuelings. The second thing that impressed me was the implementation of this huge large-scale plan involving the United States Armed Forces, apparently in several regions at once. You know, that bait you were talking about went to the Pacific Ocean to divert attention from what was happening in another direction. And another thing that impressed me was that no one, when the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff said that not a single Iranian plane took off and not a single shot was fired at United States military aircraft. All of this, in my opinion, simply based on what we are being told, looks quite impressive.
She said that something Trump did impressed them. I don't believe my eyes or my ears.
Look at these polls. This is fresh data from the weekend. By the way, one of the most accurate polling institutes in 2024. Trump's approval rating is 54.4%. This is for the period from the 18th to the 20th, right before he announced the strike on Iran. And it's not just the data. Trafalgar, again, one of the most accurate institutes, shows Trump with 53% approval, and that's also for the past weekend. And look at this. This is what affects these numbers, the question of young voters. This data is from, again, one of the most accurate institutes of 2024. Look at these numbers. Among voters under 40 years old,
Pay attention to the age group under 40, where Trump gained an additional 24%. Now, 61% of young people support Trump. Gentlemen, when we have 51%, that's a big deal, as they say, right? But 61% is just fantastic. Fantastic. Especially in this group where the Democrats used to say, the future is ours, the youth are with us. 61% have come to like Trump. That's unheard of. When a president has around 50% support, that's considered high, because it's not just 50-50. It's 50 in favor, 37 against. The rest have no idea what's going on in the world around them. Well, look at Trump's support.
live on Friday. Our Rasmussen overnight poll on June 18th showed a simply astonishing result, 56% approval, which again is roughly in line with other polls, and to be precise, it's 55.98%. And again, it wasn't just Rasmussen. Insider Advantage gave Trump a 54% approval rating that's 10 points higher than his disapproval numbers.
It's interesting that this operation and the public's attitude toward Trump might help push through the main bill in the Senate, the one everyone says that if it passes, Republicans will get a significant majority in the Senate and Congress in 2026, and in 2028, most likely someone from Trump's team, someone he recommends, will enter the White House. This is a bill that changes numerous principles introduced into American life by Obama, Biden, and even Hillary. Well, naturally, that means by Comrade Soros as well. And this bill, it's a big, wonderful law. As Trump says, this is squeezing socialism, globalism, and Sorosism out of American life.
There's another reason why Trump's ratings will keep rising, and this is the most important reason of all.
We will stand boldly, dream daringly, and nothing will stand in our way because we are Americans. The future belongs to us, and our golden era is just beginning.
Wow.
It's such an exciting time to be alive. Right now, America is reclaiming its rightful place as the greatest, most powerful, and prosperous nation on Earth. We already have so many reasons to celebrate. Safer borders, elimination, permission to drill, baby drill, and $1 trillion of new investments flowing into the economy. We are on the verge of what will be known as the most prosperous time in American history.
Trump gives America hope. He gives a sense of confidence in the future, confidence that problems can be solved and that they will be solved.
Limited options. Limited options, all of their regional proxies from Hamas to Hezbollah. Even the Houthis in Yemen now seem relatively neutralized at the moment, so their options are very limited. They have some proxies in Iraq, so we'll see what happens there with our military bases. And of course, there are concerns that some sleeper cells might have slipped through the southern border with Biden's inaction. But at the moment, it seems that Iran really has extremely limited options for retaliation. Any further resistance will most likely lead to even greater international humiliation and pressure on the regime. Perhaps it would be worth considering negotiations for survival, since it has been completely outmaneuvered, so to speak. But in any case, I think Trump has demonstrated not only to the country but to the whole world how legendary our army is, and therefore how legendary he is himself.
Things are really bad in Iran. They were already bad before the Israeli attack, and now they've gotten even worse. So what exactly could this lead to?
Iran's economy is in deep trouble. Iran's economy is in a deep crisis, and this isn't getting the attention it deserves. Israel in these
over the weekend struck Iranian oil storage facilities in parts of Iran's largest gas field.
Iran's economy has gone through a so-called lost decade of economic growth, accompanied by high inflation.
Stock and commodity markets are reopening.
After the crash on Friday, when Israel attacked Iran, oil was in the spotlight.
While the whole world is watching the tensions with Israel, a much more important story is unfolding inside Iran. Prices are rising rapidly, and inflation is approaching 50%. The real currency has collapsed really badly. On the black market, you can now get more than 700,000 reals for $1 United States dollar. That's 10 times more than just 7 years ago.
Just to be clear, in 2018, you could get 70,000 reals for $1, and now it's 700,000. That's terrible inflation. And that's despite the fact that Iran has plenty of resources and a very intelligent population. And how are things in Venezuela? Only here it's Islamism and there it's socialism.
Socialism. This crisis is not just about sanctions or bad luck. It is run by an entire network of elite corruption and global isolation that is quietly strangling the country. Today we will figure out what is really happening and why the economy of Iran, one of the most resource-rich countries in the world, is dying a painful death. Let's start by discussing the current problems that are tormenting their economy. The Iranian rial is at the very center of this chaos. In 2018, you could get 70,000 reals for $1. By the middle of 2025, this figure soared to 700,000, even 800,000 reals. That's a tenfold drop in value. For Iranians, this means that every trip to the market turns into a lottery. A bag of rice that used to cost 100,000 rials a few years ago now costs almost $1 million. Salaries can't keep up with rising prices. Most workers earn about 40 million reals a month, which is barely enough for food and rent. The central bank tried to solve the problem by printing more money, but as you can imagine, that only made things worse. This fueled inflation, which has reached record highs every year in recent years. The situation with food is even worse. Prices for bread and butter have increased by 50% since 2023. Imported goods, like phones or car parts, are considered a luxury because the rial is worth almost nothing abroad. These aren't just numbers on a screen. These are families who have to skip meals to make ends meet. Because of the rapid rise in prices, jobs disappear very quickly. The official unemployment rate is about 10%, but it's most likely an underestimate. Among young people, this figure is closer to 30%, since almost every fourth Iranian under 30 is unemployed, and among young women, it's even higher, about 42%. Iran's industry is also collapsing. Take, for example, the automotive sector, which was once a source of national pride. In 2011, it produced 1,400,000 cars and provided jobs for thousands of people.
By 2024, production barely reached 1 million.
Due to sanctions that cut off access to components and markets, factories and cities like Tabriz are shutting down, leaving skilled workers unemployed.
The situation is quite similar for China, except China was a global manufacturer, while Iran was just a gas station, at least in recent years. But the problems that both TOL and the commissars have are the same, and for the same reason. The main thing in captivity, for some reason, is that the thinking process, the mental apparatus in general, doesn't work well. It only works for survival, and that's it. Netanyahu, who stopped the attacks on Iran, announced from the podium that if Iran resumes its nuclear program, it will have to pay a high price for it.
For Iranians, this means that every trip to the market turns into a lottery. A bag of rice that cost 100,000 reals a few years ago now costs almost $1 million. Salaries can't keep up with rising prices. Most workers earn about 40 million reals a month. That's barely enough for food and rent. The central bank tried to solve the problem by printing more money, but as you can imagine, that only made things worse. This fueled inflation, which has reached record highs every year in recent years. The situation with food is even worse. Prices for bread and butter have increased by 50% since 2023. Imported goods like phones or car parts are considered a luxury because the real is worth almost nothing abroad. These are not just numbers on a screen. These are families who are forced to skip meals just to make ends meet. Because of the rapid rise in prices, jobs disappear very quickly. The official unemployment rate is about 10%, but it's most likely an underestimate. Among young people, this figure is closer to 30%, since almost 1 in 4 Iranians under 30 is unemployed. And among young women, it's even higher, about 42%. Iran's industry is also collapsing. Take, for example, the automotive sector, which was once a source of national pride. In 2011, it produced 1.4 million cars and provided jobs for thousands of people. By 2024, production barely reached 1 million. Due to sanctions that cut off access to components and markets, factories in cities like Tabriz are shutting down, leaving skilled workers unemployed.
And the United States media still can't calm down. And even though they know they look ridiculous, they keep babbling.
CNN is scum, and so is MSNBC.
We exposed today's nuclear project. No, we foiled Iran's nuclear project. If anyone in Iran tries to revive this project, we will act with the same determination, with the same strength to stop any such attempt. I repeat, Iran will not have nuclear weapons.
From the President of the United States moving past the personal attacks the President has made against.
This is the result of the political efforts I undertook with the Israel Defense Forces. This is the result of the fruitful diplomatic efforts I led with Minister Dorner, President Trump, and his team. I have to say, Israel has never had a more loyal friend in the White House than President Trump, and I am very grateful to him for our joint efforts. This is of great importance for the national security of Israel, for the safety of each of you, your children and grandchildren, for your future, and for the entire Middle East. We destroyed the main enrichment facility in Natanz, the uranium processing plant in Isfahan, and the heavy water reactor in Arak. Our friend President Trump joined our efforts in an unprecedented way. Under his orders, the United States Armed Forces destroyed the underground enrichment facility.
It's interesting that the announcers know that we know they're lying, and they know that we know that they know they're lying, and yet they keep lying. In fact, almost no one watches them anymore, but they keep going and going and going. What can you do?
Lie. I think everything was completely destroyed. I believe that we are here precisely because those pilots, Pilot Bitva, did an incredible job. And, fake news like the peculiarities of, and they say, I agree that it was destroyed, but maybe not like that. Do you know what they do? They actually harm great pilots who risk their lives.
We've already heard that, and honestly, we've known it for a long time.
Iran will never restore its nuclear program. Absolutely not from there. That place is under a thick layer of rock. That place is destroyed. The pilots of Bitba did their job. They did it better than anyone could have imagined. They struck late in the evening. It was dark, with no moon, and they hit the target with each of those shells. And that place is gone now.
There's no scar.
But when I watch CNN all night, they try to say, well, maybe it wasn't as destroyed as we thought. It was destroyed. Look at these pinpoint strikes, and everything will become clear. This place is gone. And I'll say, I think we should apologize to the pilots of Bitba. I think we really should apologize. I think these guys, these television channels and cable networks are real losers. They really are.
Well, what can I say? Our honest guys are there with...
All right, you're joining us here. Kate Baldwin, John Berman.
You've joined us. With you are Kate Baldwin and John Berman. And we continue to discuss a truly very important development over the last 48 to 72 hours, when everything was happening rapidly and unpredictably. And now there are new statements from the President of the United States.
Look, gentlemen, at their long faces. Just look them in the face after hearing that they're liars, said right during the broadcast, during a live broadcast. They can't do anything to him, that they're sellouts, that they're scum. They know that all of this is true. But the most frustrating thing is that they sell themselves for pennies.
The President's saying two things. The President is saying two things. Next. First, he says that he doesn't believe Terra Maria was violated. When another journalist asked his opinion on this matter, he replied, I think some parties violated it, period. And it's absolutely clear that he's not happy with how things are developing this morning.
But now he's boarding the Marine One, heading to the NATO summit in the Netherlands. And the President doesn't know, the President of the United States doesn't know if this order is still in effect here, if it's still valid. That's where we are this morning. He believes that some parties have violated it.
And did you hear him at the end? Those were words of, really, I think, disappointment directed at both Israel and Iran because of what happened after the President condemned this deal. Saying that they don't understand what they're doing and that these guys need to calm down. It's absurd. We will be here. Today, we will repeatedly return to these words and wait for new reactions from the region. Let's bring in our team to cover the topic. Joining us live from the White House is CNN correspondent Elena Try. Jeremy Diamond is on the line from Israel, and Fred Pleitgen is also working for us this morning in Tehran. Elena, let's start with you. This is a very important point of view that President Trump expressed this morning.
That's absolutely right. I was just on the South Lawn with the president when he spoke to us this morning before leaving. He talked to us. Listen, he is really, really frustrated and, frankly, openly angry. I have to point that out. I spend a lot of time with President Trump. This is one of the angriest moments I've ever seen him have. And it's absolutely clear that he's angry at both countries, at Israel and at Iran. We asked him if he believes that the ceasefire is holding and being maintained. After that, we saw what seemed to be a missile possibly launched from Iran. And then there were strong statements from the Israeli foreign minister who said he wants to respond with full force. The president said that he believes and hopes that the ceasefire will hold. Then he said that as soon as he finishes talking with us, he plans to make some calls to try to stop it. This was a direct quote. He said, I will try to stop it.
And as we know, Trump made the call.
Well,
in Israel, I think, Bibi. And maybe to someone who is negotiating with Iran. By the way, it's unclear who in Iran is making decisions today. The same Ayatollah, some other Ayatollahs, the cabinet of ministers, the commander-in-chief of something, if they even have one. Because as soon as he was appointed, the Israelis would immediately remove him. But the fact that there are active negotiations going on between Iran, Russia, and China and that we are inside the ruling forces in Iran is absolutely clear. And the following question arises. Pretty
scathing comments there for Benjamin Netanyahu. And fortunately, it seems that the situation has calmed down now.
It seems that Trump managed to do it.
Did he manage to
dissuade Netanyahu
from continuing this war? And if Israel retreats, will Iran retreat as well? Who knows? But at the same time, I really believe that this is a situation, no matter who started it, honestly. It poses a more serious question for the United States. If these two want to keep fighting each other, and we're trying to prevent that. And, again, it seems that the ceasefire regime has really been restored and is in effect here. But if the situation gets out of control, at what point
United States of America
will basically say that we no longer have a strategic interest in this conflict? Because, keep in mind, it's worth noting that unlike those players who want regime change in Iran, whether it's American neoconservative lords like Mark Levin and many others, or Benjamin Netanyahu himself, who Gadania was a staunch supporter of this, the real goal, the stated goal, and by the way, the goal I fully believe in, is the Trump administration. All this time, it was not about regime change in Iran. It was not a war with Iran. All this time, it was simply about not wanting Iran to have nuclear weapons. And now when the strike has already been carried out, when the United States has basically left the game, taken itself off the agenda, at what point do we basically say, we don't want to get involved in this, right? This is no longer our war in the Middle East. That's a big question that I think is coming up right now. And especially considering Trump's recent statements, where he basically says that his support for Netanyahu and the Netanyahu government is not unconditional.
all of this too.
It coincides with many of the tense moments they actually had in the previous months before this strike. In fact, there has actually been a certain tension between Trump and Netanyahu for quite some time now, which we need to discuss here. Because again, this started long before these statements. So we will break all of this down in today's video and also tell you about the real updates, apparently, regarding the restoration of the ceasefire. Let's see how long this will last. Honestly, who knows? I mean, I hope, it will last here for a very long time. But if this doesn't happen again, I think the United States will have to ask itself some very serious questions about what our strategic goal is at this point. Because, as we've been told, well, that's what we were promised. By the way, if we just destroy Iran's nuclear facilities and capabilities, then everything will be fine. No, of course, we're not trying to get involved in Iraq or create an Iraq 2.0, but alright then. I think at this point, American politicians need to be true to their words and say, yes, that's not our goal, that's not our intention.
That's not our goal, that's not our mission. We didn't sign up for the United States to throw Putin out of the Kremlin. We didn't sign up to end religious obscurantism in Iran. No matter how much we consider it obscurantism, it's their obscurantism. We're not going to change the constitutional monarchy of the United Kingdom. Although it also causes surprise and generally laughter, I would even say.
A kind of ironic.
Yes, or for example, we're not going to throw out the bandits who seized power in Somalia, Darfur, Sudan. That's the business of the countries and peoples living in those countries. We don't interfere with them. Although Americans, Europeans, and Russian history, so to speak, are full of interventions aimed at changing regimes in many countries. But on this issue, our almost libertarian president stands out. Almost. Did you notice that I said yes? But unlike the previous war enthusiasts who wanted to show the world something, establish order, beat up some small nation if possible, or something like that. In general, it didn't work out very well in Vietnam, Korea, Iraq, and other places like Croatia. We were sitting
there trying to establish peace between these two peoples. We are trying to keep doing that, but honestly, whether it's Iran or Israel, if they want to keep fighting here, that's, again, an open question that I think America needs to figure out for itself. But you know what? Let's not go down that road just yet, because there is some diplomatic news on this front, at least supposedly. And apparently Donald Trump's tough statements towards Netanyahu turned out to be effective. In response to this, he has now stated, and I quote, "Israel, don't drop those bombs. If you do, it will be a serious violation. Bring your pilots home immediately." Donald Trump, President of the United States. This, of course, refers to the fact that while we were speaking, while Trump was holding that very informal, improvised press conference, Israeli planes apparently were already in the air and heading toward the Iranian capital, Tehran. And continuing on this topic, according to him, Trump, as he claims, picked up the phone, made a call, and now says, I quote, Israel will not attack Iran. All the planes will turn around and fly home, waving their wings in a friendly way.
To Iran.
No one will be harmed. This ceasefire takes effect. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So, according to Trump, yes, it was just a little situation where you need to rein in the kids a bit. Alright, by the way, he's absolutely right that they're fighting each other. It's been going on here for a very long time. I mean, practically since the very beginning of the Islamic Revolution in 1900.
70s, right?
This conflict took place both formally and informally, and in this case, he basically just had to tell both of them to stop it.
One country, Pakistan, submitted a recommendation to the Nobel Committee to award the Peace Prize to Donald Trump. I wonder if Iran or Israel will submit a similar application to the Nobel Committee. I would strongly advise Israel to do that. I completely understand that the Israelis are very upset right now. Again, it's like America isn't letting them finish off the enemy. But the difference between previous situations and this one is that America just did something that Israel couldn't do itself, and America is now more friendly toward Israel, maybe more than in the last 50 years.
It's worth noting that, according to the information we have, there are indeed reports of explosions in Tehran, despite Trump's order to Israel to stop the strikes. So it's unclear whether these reports are, confirmed. Was it something else? Did the explosions hit anything? Was it demonstrative? It's hard to say for sure, but it's worth noting here, right? You might see a development where nobody knows what's going to happen here, right? Because according to the report given here, there were explosions in Tehran on Tuesday. Despite the fact that Donald Trump stated that Israel canceled airstrikes on his orders to preserve the newly established ceasefire, two witnesses who were contacted by phone in the Iranian capital reported that they heard two loud explosions. Israeli Army radio, which is very interesting, stated that Israel struck an Iranian radar facility near Tehran.
Donald Trump believes, just like yours truly, that most revolutions, regime changes, and victories of the forces of good and justice create new regimes that are usually worse than those they replace through these revolutions. Well, there are plenty of examples of this.
In my personal opinion, Donald Trump is right about this. If regime change in Iran happens naturally, completely organically, by the will of the people themselves, then obviously America won't really have to intervene to stop it. But I think at the same time, it's worth noting that we've repeatedly seen in the Middle East, and by the way, all over the world, how American-supported or American-imposed changes happen. Regime change leads not only to chaos, but often to an alternative that turns out to be even worse. Whether it's the situation in Iraq, in Libya, or possibly in Syria. However, let's see what this will eventually lead to be honest, but there have been many such cases in this region. Yes, sometimes, regime change can certainly be dangerous, and it's objectively reasonable for President Trump to actually say that he's stepping back. And again, friends, this shows that he was sincere when he said that his problem was not with the Iranian regime itself, but only with making sure that the Iranian regime does not have nuclear weapons. That's the problem, and that's where the disagreement will arise. Because, by the way, that's exactly why, as soon as Trump was satisfied that he had destroyed the Iranian nuclear facilities, he basically said, okay, America is leaving, we're done, we have no more interest in this, let's make a truce, we're not going to keep attacking Iran, and so on. The problem he will face, and the problem that I think is now creating some of the tension that you might be seeing here, aside from the fact that Iran and Israel have historically never gotten along at all, the issue is that Trump's position is no nuclear weapons, but also no regime change. The problem here and the source of tension is that Trump's position is completely at odds with the position of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And as I already said, I actually pointed this out before, but I'll repeat it once again. It's worth noting that to understand Benjamin Netanyahu's policy, you're essentially dealing with a man who is a true original neoconservative. Alright, even before George Bush Jr. and everything else, Netanyahu was already calling for regime change in Iran and Iraq. And even if you go back to the Soviet Union, he's been doing this for decades. And basically every time he put forward the same main idea, oh, if Iraq falls, it will be good for the whole world, it will stop terrorism, and so on. And what happened in the end? All this time, he keeps saying that the Iranian regime must be overthrown and things like that. So, listen, to understand the difference between Netanyahu and Trump, here's a selection of Netanyahu's speeches from different years, which clearly shows where his political interests lie and what his real motivation is. Because in my opinion, it's important to understand this in the broader context of the whole situation. During Trump's first presidency, they had a relatively good relationship. But now the source of the new conflict is that Trump 2.0 and Netanyahu hold diametrically opposite positions on this issue. Alright, we've struck, so what now? How do we proceed with Iran? To understand this, we need to look into the politics of Benjamin Netanyahu.
I'm curious how commentators in the United States see Israel's problem and the conflict between Bibi and Trump, which stems from their different worldviews. In fact, Netanyahu from Israel's perspective, and Trump from the perspective of a superpower that looks not just at a part of the world order, but at the entire planet.
And its main representative, the Palestine Liberation Organization, international terrorism, will collapse. If you remove Saddam's regime, I guarantee that it will have a huge positive impact on the region. We would like to see a regime change, at least I would, both in Iran and in Iraq. Now, this is a practical question. Where's the best place to start? The question isn't whether to remove the regime in Iraq, but when to remove it. The question isn't whether you want regime change in Iran, but how to achieve it.
Are there any other countries against which you would recommend the United States carry out preemptive strikes at this stage?
The answer is an emphatic yes. Two countries are competing with each other. Who will be the first to acquire nuclear weapons? This is about Iraq and Iran. But by the way, the third country is Libya. Libya is quickly trying to develop the capability for an atomic bomb. So now you have three countries. All of them are standing together to stop Iran's campaign of conquest, enslavement, and terror.
I know that no matter which side you're on, you support Israel.
That's right. I'm showing this because I think it's important for people to understand.
From this, it's clear that Israel sees a problem threatening its existence and rushes to solve it, involving all possible allies. And that's understandable, that's natural. Trump has a different perspective. We can't and won't attack everyone. How can we make it so they don't want to build atomic bombs and don't want to attack either Israel or the United States? How can we make it so that problems aren't solved with a hammer or an axe? And Israel is afraid that while we're searching for this solution, Jews will start being exterminated again. And Israel, the Jews have a reason for this. I'm an Israeli and a Jew myself, as many watching this show know. There's a fear that if they break through, all the Jews will be exterminated. How can I put this more precisely? Once burned, twice shy. Naturally, we're cautious even with water because we don't know if it's just water or something flammable. Because we're afraid that if we miss the moment even once, Israel will cease to exist, and another 6 million Jews will perish.
This is who Donald Trump is currently dealing with, right? This is a person who should simply be mentioned as a fact. Okay, this isn't controversial. This isn't a conspiracy theory. He has supported almost every United States-backed regime change attempt and has spoken about it publicly over the past several decades, whether it was Iraq or Libya. Now, essentially, he hopes that the same thing will happen with Iran. And Trump makes it very clear. No, right? No, that's not our agenda at all. And even before, by the way, this strike happened, as a result of which essentially Netanyahu probably got what he wanted, if you can put it that way. It's worth noting that the tension and internal disagreements existed even before that. It is reported that there was a call during which Vice President J.D. Vance actually accused Netanyahu of trying to drag America into a war. And in all of this, and this tension arose because Netanyahu is taking a hardline stance on this issue. He basically told Trump that it's not even worth trying to negotiate with the Iranians. Trump replied no before resorting to military action. Let's try to negotiate. There was an exchange of opinions between them. There was some tension, but all right, the strike was carried out. In this sense, Netanyahu strategically achieved what he was aiming for. Given that, now the problem is that Netanyahu is not satisfied, right? Because, as he himself says, regime change is his goal. That's exactly what he really wants here. The same goes for American neoconservatives who, it would seem, could be satisfied with what has happened. Everything turned out the way they wanted, they got the strike and everything else, but notice that they still look unsatisfied. When the ceasefire was announced, you might have noticed that some of them became even angrier and more irritated. Something's not right here, is it? I thought the mission was accomplished. I thought we did exactly what we wanted. No. For them, all of this was just a pretext from the very beginning to start a war with the goal of regime change, right? To start the Iraq War, version 2.0, and Trump handled it very skillfully. He carried out a military operation, took the risk of escalation, but didn't let the situation get to that point and didn't try to defend his legacy. There, he made it clear that he doesn't believe in endless wars and didn't fall for that provocation. But now you will most likely see the same tension again that was observed between Trump and Netanyahu in the last few months. And as it seems to me, it will start to grow again. I'll say it again, I hope everything will be resolved peacefully. I think right now the United States Trump is trying to say, listen, we want a ceasefire, you'd better comply with it, we're going to set the rules in this matter. At the same time, however, the question arises. If they decide to keep fighting and the United States' strategic goal has already been achieved, is it even worth it for the United States at all? To intervene? Is this even the United States' business at all? Or maybe we should say, we told you we're done, we told you that you don't want this? If Israel continues in the same way, then basically, in this regard, they will be left alone. It will be very interesting to watch, but again, guys, according to Trump, the ceasefire is now back in effect. Some say that's not the case. Maybe it will take effect after the strike. We'll see how it goes in this regard. But in short, it seems to me that what's important is that, according to all the information, the United States is now out of this situation. We're no longer involved, that's clear. And that's essentially what Trump promised, right? Not to drag America into war.
Yes, that's what Trump promised the people. No war. We're no longer starting exhausting and long wars. We solve the problem and no longer interfere, but we offer our mediation in peace negotiations. The same scenario in in India and Pakistan, the same scenario in Ukraine and Russia, the same scenario in the Middle East. We solve our problems, and in fact, ours and America's are global problems, and we are ready to mediate. But if you want to fight instead of looking for ways to coexist peacefully, then we will wish you, well, I don't know. We are unlikely to wish you success in this matter, but at least as few losses as possible. And we leave. We will no longer take part in the idiocy of a military solution to the problem. Israelis and Ukrainians might say about our enemy, each of them will say it's impossible to reach an agreement. But the enemy, although both Jews and Ukrainians don't want to admit it, maybe there are their own fears, their own problems, their own needs that need to be understood and maybe solved together. Imagining the other side as crazed fanatics, you will never find a solution. That means prolonging wars and killings and deaths and nightmares. And the possibility of complete annihilation of either side, whether by swords like the Janissaries or by atomic bombs. Maybe there is a compromise, I don't know. The United States found one with Qatar, found $1 trillion investment, and Qatar immediately stopped supporting the Palestinians, including those studying at our universities. They found ways with Saudi Arabia, yes. What ways? I don't know, but they found them during Trump's first term. They found ways with India and Pakistan, too. There was a time when Germans and French couldn't coexist. Now no one even remembers that. How many generations have passed? It's really not that many. There are still people alive who couldn't stand the Bosches, but now no one even remembers that. If there's someone in the White House who can bring both sides to understanding, to compromise, to solving problems, even if it requires some mutual concessions, dances, some kind of, I don't know. I don't see a solution to the problem today. Between Israel and Iran, I don't see one. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. That's why I'm not the president of the United States of America, because it doesn't even occur to me how to make it happen. But the one who's in the White House right now does think of it. And that needs to be taken advantage of. Okay, gentlemen. I fully understand that what I said at the end will cause rejection and irritation, but I ask you to please understand that I am completely on the side of those who are being attacked, both on the Ukrainian side and the Israeli side, both on the Israeli side and the Ukrainian side. Nevertheless, I believe that Trump should be taken advantage of, because this is a unique chance to find a solution to the problems. Whether it will work out or not, I don't know, but we have to try. Subtitles created by